our first speaker for remarks, and that is Mr. Prudence Sebaizi, again, who's the Chief Technical Advisor of the African Free Trade Area and head of the African Union Trade Negotiation. Prudence Sebaizi is the Chief Technical Advisor of AfCFTA and head of AfCFTA Negotiation Support Unit, based in the Department of Trade and Industry and the African Union Commission. He provides technical and strategic advice to the AfCFTA negotiating institutions, as well as to the Commissioner of Trade and Industry on the AfCFTA negotiations. He's the overall coordinator of the AfCFTA negotiations. And pleased to have Mr. Prudence Sebaizi. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Jide, for that long introduction. He's very happy that you have invited him, and he delegated me to represent the AfCFTA Secretariat at this very important trade summit. I know the importance of this this forum. I'm going to talk briefly about the African Continental Free Trade Area. I would have wished to have longer time, but I know time is limited. Let me start by giving you a background of what most of you already know about Africa. Africa is a continent with 55 countries. And it has been identified that within those 55 countries, we have about 107 borders, land borders that separate them. So if you have to do business in Africa, then you have to cross all those 107 borders, and this comes with a cost. And the average cost of crossing your products from one country to the other is about 6.9% of tariff that has to be paid. Those who understand international trade, this is the average tariff rate when you trade in Africa. Secondly, we know that there's not much intra-African trade when compared to other continents in the world. Intra-African trade is only estimated at 18%. Compared to other continents, it is around 60%. So there is little percentage of trade across African countries, despite the fact that there are many countries and the continent is big. So this means that there are challenges that have to be addressed on the continent. So the AfCFTA, which is the African Continental Free Trade Area, is intended to address those challenges, those obstacles, not only the challenges related to tariff, but also challenges related to what we call non-tariff barriers, which are mainly the complex customs procedures, the bureaucracies, corruption. The AfCFTA, of course, is a market. It's bringing together 1.27 billion African, which is a large population, and about 3.4 trillion US dollar in terms of the combined GDP of Africa. And as I said, 55 countries form that market. And when you bring all of them together, you are trying to remove those artificial borders that separate them. And by doing so, we are creating opportunities. So there are many opportunities that will arise when we implement this AfCFTA agreement. And one of those is directly related to the welfare gains for the consumers. Consumers on the continent, with the AfCFTA market, they are going to have a broad, a broad range of choice of products for them to consume. Because if intra-African trade level is at 18%, with this trade increases, there are many products which were not traditionally reaching some parts of the continent, which are now going to reach easily and at an affordable price for consumers. And the other aspect that consumers are going to benefit from is the quality of products. The AfCFTA is setting standards for products that will be traded on the continent. So we are going to ensure that Africa is consuming standard products. Africa will no more be dumping ground for low quality products because the AfCFTA is going to regulate. The opportunity that we see brought by the AfCFTA is opportunity for attracting investment from within the continent, but also from outside the continent. The AfCFTA is going to address this in two ways. One, looking at it from a market perspective, the AfCFTA is widening the market of the continent. And by widening the market, then investors are going to benefit from economies of scale. They don't need to come and invest in each and every African countries. They would rather come invest in one country and then sell their products across 55 countries. The second aspect where we are going to attract investment is through rules that we are going to set up in the protocol on investment. The protocol on investment is going to mainly address issues of investment facilitation, and by doing so, we are removing all barriers that have been hindering investors to come and invest on the continent. What I can tell the audience is that not to invest at the right time to come and invest in Africa. There are a number of sectors that are coming up, especially manufacturing sector, automotive sector, textile industry, air transport, financial services. Those are very sectors that we think are going to boost as a result of implementing AfCFTA. And the AfCFTA is also going to create a job, and this is very important. It's going to create a job, and it's going to lead to transformation, structural transformation of the economy from traditional exports of raw materials and come up with processing of those raw materials into finished products. And when we go through the processing of those raw materials, we are setting up industries that will be for different categories of people who could not afford jobs in the past. So the AfCFTA is going to be another. AfCFTA is also going to contribute to poverty reduction, of course, by many ways. We have done studies about it, and recently published World Bank report has revealed that with AfCFTA we are going to lift about 100 million out of poverty, and 30 million of them are going to be lifted out of extreme poverty. So those are people who will be living on less than $1 a day. So these people are going to be lifted out of poverty by implementing the AfCFTA. And the AfCFTA is also going to ensure the income distribution, especially that it's going to provide jobs to unskilled labor compared to those jobs that were occupied by skilled labor before AfCFTA. It is also going to ensure equal distribution of job opportunities among men and women, because sectors where there are many women employed are going to be boosted by it.
Thank you. First, I'd just like to thank the Dulles Regional Chamber of Commerce, Senator Warner, and also you, Mr. Babajide, for convening this event. As Babajide just explained, I am responsible for trade, but really our overall economic and commercial engagement with Africa, and I consider it to be a significant part of my portfolio. You know, the Biden-Harris administration is focused on building back better. A significant part of that agenda is ensuring that we have a foreign policy for the middle class. Rebuilding the American middle class involves creating new and better jobs, raising wages, and strengthening communities. Robust trade, investment, and commercial linkages with Africa has to be part of the agenda. And as I said, it's a significant part of my day-to-day responsibilities. I returned to the State Department where I spent the early part of my career as a Foreign Service officer. I returned after spending the past 8 or 9 years focusing on domestic policy priorities, including ensuring that the American economy works for marginalized communities. And part of that was my work as the executive director of the Black Economic Alliance. You know, we saw over the past years this pandemic and the multiple crises that were exposed, if you will, as part of the pandemic, just how connected our economic development at home and abroad are. As such, we are focused on economic recovery. The U.S. is committed to helping all Americans and countries around the world, including in Africa, to save lives and recover economically from COVID-19. We will build back better by boosting jobs and opportunities. And to that end, we're encouraging more businesses, and especially small and medium-sized businesses, to take a closer look at sub-Saharan Africa. Many U.S. companies are already working on the continent, but we want to see more. We want to address risk perceptions by helping individuals and businesses recognize the options to a dynamic African business. And where appropriate, we'll be providing advocacy and other resources to make sure that we are really engaged at the highest levels in increasing these commercial linkages between the continent and the United States. In particular, we are looking at ways to boost connections between small and medium-sized businesses here in the United States to those in Africa. And that includes businesses founded by members of the African diaspora in the United States, which we consider to be all people of African descent. Many in the African diaspora are already aware of the opportunities, but we can and must do more to tap into their knowledge, existing support, and inclination to engage on the continent and support their business goals. We're also engaging African countries through economic and commercial diplomacy to promote enabling environments that welcome the private sector. Overall, many parts of the government are looking at ways to boost support for two-way trade and investment between the United States and Africa. Many are familiar with the multi-agency Prosper Africa initiative, and I believe you'll be hearing from Prosper Africa later today, as well as the other key U.S. agencies. I also want to highlight the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which provides beneficiary countries with duty-free access to U.S. markets for eligible products. Currently, 39 African countries are AGOA beneficiaries. Since AGOA's inception, non-oil and non-mineral exports from sub-Saharan Africa have increased 250%. The States also supports the AfCFTA, which Mr. Sahizi spoke about earlier. And we are looking at ways to increase our support even more because as we've talked about, really closing the barriers between African countries and decreasing the trade barriers will ensure that companies see Africa as one large market instead of 55 separate markets that they must then negotiate and pay increased cost to be a part of. And we believe that will really not only create jobs, increase investment, but also strengthen the U.S.-Africa relationship. And so I'm pleased to note that the United States has provided targeted technical assistance to the AfCFTA Secretariat, and we hope to do much more. Later this week, the President will host a summit on the climate crisis. We want to facilitate investment in climate-smart infrastructure and build resilience to climate change. Together, we can drive a green energy revolution both at home and abroad. There was a question earlier about that this is an area where young people, both in the United States but in Africa, can really be engaged in ensuring that the climate technologies of the future are built for today, but also with the future in mind. One way that we are working on climate is through Power Africa, launched by the Obama administration. Power Africa has brought first-time electricity to more than 88 million people. It has also facilitated the financial close of over 100 power sector transactions across sub-Saharan Africa. Many proudly feature U.S. content and services. Bringing this back home, we know increasing global ties is good for Virginia. In 2020, Virginia exported $16.4 billion in goods to the world. This figure included almost 578 million exports to countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Today, Virginia's top are South Africa, Nigeria, Senegal, and Ghana. We hope to see these numbers and the list of top partner countries grow. Increasing partnerships and two-way trade investment with Africa promotes prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic. The administration is committed to ensuring that U.S. foreign and economic policies bring that prosperity to the middle class, including in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you, Deputy Assistant Secretary Cook, for your remarks. I will now turn it over to Bill Machayo to introduce our keynote speaker, Senator Mark Warner.
Hey everyone, my name is Bill Machayo. I'm the Regional Director for U.S. Senator Mark Warner, former governor, as he so eloquently always mentions, and now is also the Senior Senator and Chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and also sits on Finance and Banking. So I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Bo, and thank you as well for helping me become more familiar with the African diaspora in Virginia. It's great to see Secretary Cook, Mayor's office. I want to thank the Dulles Chamber. I think the Dulles Chamber, I think it was really thoughtful to think about this kind of opportunity. In fact, we've got 185 people assembled here from the business community, from the African diaspora. One of the things that Bo, part of that, Bo coming from family that's part of that diaspora, has helped me over the last years is our office has reached out specifically to the Sudanese community, for example, to the Ethiopian community, to the African diaspora communities from the Horn of Africa. We had a separate outreach to the communities in West Africa. In Virginia, we're proud of the fact that we have 150,000 first-generation African Americans in the Commonwealth. And as we think about how we strengthen the African Continental Free Trade Association so that Virginia-based business, American-based business can view Africa as a single market, not 55 separate markets. Mr. Swazi says, I think one of the assets that we bring to the table is that African diaspora that lives in Virginia. I think that Secretary Cook's comments of Virginia doing $17 billion in trade, but only $500 million of it with Africa, that shows to me a great opportunity. I think one of the things that we, those of us on the American side of this discussion, should be embarrassed at is if you count all of American trade with Africa, not just Virginia's. The United States of America's total trade with Africa is less than the country of Netherlands. This is an opportunity, one of the fastest growing markets in the world, and again, by having a prominent African diaspora in Virginia and in America, we've got people that know these markets, that know these communities. We just simply have to find out ways to link them better. And as Bo mentioned, one of the things I've tried to do is, Bo works for me, but I've got somebody from the Sudanese community working on my staff now, some Somali community working on my staff now, to make sure that my office is comfortable, familiar, and that this outreach is not a one-time affair only. And one of the things I look forward to coming out of this discussion is specific action items that I can take as an advocate for this increased trade, collaboration, and cooperation. Because I know, I'll close with this comment, so we'll get to the questions. I see from my role sitting as chair of the Intelligence Committee what China is trying to do. China Belt Road Initiative and digital Silk Road. They are making enormous investments in a number of African countries. And America needs to not just talk that we're going to increase this trade and collaboration, but we need to actually do it, implement programs. I commend the Biden administration's comments of making this a higher emphasis. Obviously, during the previous administration, suffice to say that this was not a priority. It needs to be returned as a priority, both in terms of economic opportunities, but we've got the fastest growing part of the whole world in terms of population growth. We need to make sure America has got strong ties to the continent. And again, speaking from a Virginia-centric standpoint, taking advantage of that 150,000 strong African diaspora in Virginia, that will be the ambassadors in so many ways. And my hope is as businesses across Virginia look at strengthening these ties, they can draw upon this enormous resource of the African diaspora in Virginia as to as to help open those doors and be those lead agents in this kind of collaboration. So kudos to the Dulles Chamber, and let's see if I can take away a few action items from this presentation.
Thanks, Senator Warner. Thanks, we'll be taking questions, so make sure to please put the questions in the Q&A box and make sure that we get to it.
Yeah, thank you all for your presentation and your timely remarks. This question is for Deputy Secretary Cook and Senator Warner, but Mr. Sebahesi, please feel free to answer this as well. How do you envision the U.S.-Africa multilateral engagement being strengthened post-COVID?
I'll begin and then let my co-panelists join in. So multilateral engagement is a top priority of this administration. We see the what I would just call recession of the U.S. engagement on the in the multilateral sphere over the past few years as a mistake. You saw right out of the gate, we rejoined the Paris Climate Accords. We rejoined the World Health Organization. And the Biden-Harris administration engaged right away multilaterally on COVID by being one of the major donor backs, a $2 billion investment right away with an additional $2 billion commitment to COVAX. But we are also engaging through the African Union. As Mr. Sebahesi, I'm sure will note, our engagement with the continent has been, really anchored in building strong relationships with the African Union. President Biden made comments and remarks at the African Union Summit in February. We continue to engage with AU President Tshisekedi and Commissioner Faki, and we'll continue to do that, as you will see through our engagement over the next couple of weeks. We prioritize engagement with the AU because we know, as we've acknowledged, that engaging multilaterally is really the best way and one of the most effective ways, certainly including the health crisis that we're experiencing right now.
Let me add to what Secretary Cook has said. I commend the Biden administration for reentering on a multilateral basis a number of these entities. I also think, as Mr. Sebahesi said, we need to move stronger on trade relations. This is something I sit on the Finance Committee and the International Trade Subcommittee is an area that I am chair of. So how can I move the country to be stronger trade ties? I think we need to acknowledge that on the defense and intelligence side, it's not received as much attention. The United States government still works closely with security forces in many African nations. How do we expand that beyond just security into the trade regime? I keep coming back as well. We have to take more advantage of the African diaspora in America as to engage with the diaspora so that we can find ways to make these connections easier. This can be the bridge. I think I'm chair of the India caucus in the Senate. One of the strongest things that built the India-U.S. relationship from where it was 25 years ago, where it was quite weak, was the Indian diaspora in America. I think we have an opportunity with the African diaspora in America. It is an undervalued resource. It is a resource that I think in many communities is not unlike Indian Americans were 25 years ago, is just recently emerging on the political scene, getting more active in American government and politics. And I think, again, we ought to greet that, we ought to welcome it. And I would say to Virginia-based businesses in the Dulles Chamber, a lot of folks on this line are part of that diaspora. If you're thinking about doing business in Africa, reaching out to some of the members of the diaspora to help be that cultural bridge, that knowledge bridge, that's that would be a partnership that would benefit all of us.
Let me just add a couple of points to what Senator and Secretary Cook have mentioned with regard to the future relationship between Africa and the United States. What I would say as a sustainable relationship would be a partnership that is based on trade and investment. Yes, we know the COVID-19 pandemic is going to affect, and is already affecting African countries negatively. And African countries, most of them have been relying on commodity prices. So when commodity prices go up, there is boom, and when commodity prices go down, there is a recession on the continent because of the trade pattern that we have been experiencing in the past. So now that we are changing the trend, we want to ensure that Africa moves away from exporting raw materials to transforming them into finished products. And I think if the US partnership will be looking at adding value to the resources that the continent already has, that would be great. Secondly, with regard to trade partnership and trade agreements, the US should look at Africa as one market. We also want to move away from being seen as fragmented markets of 55 countries. The political engagement that we would wish to have with the United States would be to see Africa as one market, build the capacity of that market to grow, and trade at par with the market of the United States. I think those are very that I would want to mention on top of what other panelists have said.
For those answers, I want to make sure that we get to some more questions, so please continue to put them in the Q&A box.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, Senator Warner. This question is for you. I am with a small minority-owned business here in Northern Virginia. It is estimated that China consumes about 50% of the world's raw materials. And for this reason, it's digging in. China is digging in Africa to secure its interest and the raw material supply chain. There are approximately 300,000 Chinese labor doing construction work that Africans themselves can actually do. China has been building industrial parks, influencing political and business strategies in Africa, providing loans, providing some healthcare support in terms of the COVID and vaccine for Africans. They are all doing this so they can continue to have the influence on African leadership. China had just completed and operating a military base in Djibouti. Question is, how do we counter these Chinese aggressions and influence in Africa if we're not able to do what Africans are looking for, which is the partnership to counter the Chinese influence?
Okay, so thank you, one, for that question, and two, the litany of Chinese investments that you just mentioned, I see regular basis African nation, where China a decade ago came in and said, okay, we're going to offer you this great deal, build you this road, take over your port. And as you said, the African nation thought, oh great, we're going to get this incoming investment, but then the Chinese company would come in and just bring in Chinese labor. And I think that my understanding, many of these countries are trying to rethink that relationship with China. But if America or the Europeans are not there offering an alternative, so far, the last 4 years under Trump, the Americans weren't even in the game. So I do hope, and however I can help push it.
The fact that I don't know how many people know that less than 30% of the total population of West Africa has electricity, and that many manufacturers have to generate their own electricity. The company on which I'm a member of his board That's the Coca-Cola bottlers in Nigeria. We generate our own electricity to produce products across different parts of the country. Yes. And so that's a key area where there's tremendous opportunity. And of course, the renewable energy that is the new romance globally, given the climate change that Deputy Secretary of State for African Affairs spoke about earlier on. There's abundance of solar, of sunshine in West Africa. There's abundance of wind. So those are key areas in the power generation sector. Then, of course, is oil and gas. From stretching from Nigeria all the way to Mauritania, all the coast of West Africa, abundance of oil and gas, especially the abundance of gas that can facilitate clean energy. So the exploration and the exploitation of oil and gas is an area of opportunity. Also embedded in that is, of course, the petrochemical industry. I don't know how many of you are aware that Dangote commenced and a facility, a huge facility that we call it a trio in one, a refinery, a gas conversion, and a fertilizer plant. Those are opportunities across the whole of West Africa that gives manufacturers manufacture and export to other parts of Africa and indeed the rest of the world. And of course, another area of manufacturing, focusing mainly on manufacturing, are fast-moving consumer goods, food processing, building material and construction. It's a boom across West Africa. And of course, chemicals and pharmaceuticals. We have seen what COVID-19 brought across the globe. So that's an area of opportunity across West Africa and indeed Africa. And there are challenges, because we cannot, with opportunities, there are challenges. Yes, there are challenges such as inadequate physical infrastructure, road, port management, port management facility, and balance of payment challenges. But in themselves, they also provide opportunity for solution. So in essence, I had someone speak earlier, including the Deputy Secretary of State Cook and Senator Wana, referred to what I call quote-unquote Chinese incursion into Africa, where everybody was standing back. China didn't stand back. It's part of these challenges they moved in, and with moving in, there are opportunities that they're harvesting. So what the U.S. can do, in my judgment, is A, to see that there are huge market opportunities for a rapidly growing population, not just in West Africa, but across Africa. ECOWAS, that is West Africa, provides a window to other parts of Africa. United States has a lot of goodwill, not just in West Africa, but across Africa, and reinforced by the many Africans in diaspora here. Just as I said earlier, makes the understanding of Africa very easy for all businesses. United States must see Africa as the next growth opportunity. That is where this is key. And Virginia, where Senator Wana comes from, heading an important committee, the Intelligence Committee, needs to work with the State Department, Commerce Department, and Department of Treasury to engage Africa as the next growth frontier. Thank you very much.